Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. We're looking at the security lapses, soft targets after Tuesday's Brussels attacks in the company of Régis Le Sommier, deputy editor-in-chief of Paris Match magazine. His latest book in French is Dash, the story so far. For French member of the European Parliament, Constance Le Grip of the conservative Les Républicains party, Yasser Louati of the Collective Against Islamophobia. Welcome back. And we can welcome now from Place de la Bourse, the square in Brussels, where citizens have been converging these last 2 days, Belgian Member of Parliament Dirk van der Meulen of the Flemish Socialist Party. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate. And we see that behind you once again, the citizens of Brussels have again converged.
That's correct.
Let me ask you, first of all, your reaction to the Justice and the Interior Minister tendering their resignation and the Prime Minister saying, no, you stay on.
Yeah, I must say I am a member of Parliament since 26 years. I've never seen this before, that a minister who makes his own individual decision on his position, if he is still able to continue as a minister in this government. And this is an individual decision, and he goes he goes to see the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister is then saying, I don't accept it. That is really the first thing. And I think it's also not only in my personal life, but I think it's the first time in Belgian history that this happens.
Should they have resigned?
We are organizing tomorrow in Parliament a meeting with the two ministers. The Commissions of Foreign Affairs, Internal Affairs and Commission of Justice are going to question the ministers on the basis of what information did they take their decision. It's my personal opinion that what we know now, that one of the suspects who could travel twice to Turkey, and that they were informed and that they didn't apprehend him, that looks to me as being something very serious. But who knows, maybe there is more information, and that is what we are going to try to find out tomorrow.
And the Justice Minister's argument is that he was a convicted felon, but we didn't have him listed as somebody who was radicalized.
I must say that I don't understand it. You have someone who has been convicted for 10 years. He leaves prison after 4 years and 9 months under some conditions. He doesn't fulfill these conditions. That's on itself, that is more than enough if you can apprehend him to take him back in prison. But it's even worse. He traveled twice to Gaziantep. I think that, and that's one of the things we want to hear from the Minister of Foreign Affairs tomorrow. Why did the Turks take him? Personally, I hope and I think that the Turks had some reasons to apprehend him, because he was probably having contacts with people who were smuggling fighters for Daesh. So this is even worse than not respecting the condition on which you're liberated. And from the moment that our Ministry of Justice, of our police, get the information that he was apprehended by the Turks and that he was coming back to Europe, they should have done everything to get him and to bring him back in prison.
Dirk van der Meulen, I'm going to read to you a comment on the hashtag F24 debate. Belgians had all the intel they needed. That's not the problem. They just didn't act on it. And you've probably seen some of the remarks the last couple of days criticizing Belgian intelligence services. There was the French finance minister saying that the Belgian services were naive. How do you take this foreign criticism?
Well, we decided today that we were going to set up a parliamentary commission of inquiry on the investigation and on all what went wrong. And I think that this is a very wise decision. I think we are having problems. We can do things much better, and I think it's the role of Parliament to go and dig much more deeper in the functioning
so
of
wait a second. Is this the first time that such an inquiry has been put in place? Because immediately after the Paris attacks, we knew that it had been coordinated from that Molenbeek neighborhood of Brussels. There was no inquiry at the time?
There was not a parliamentary commission of inquiry. There was a special commission on terror, but the parliamentary commission of inquiry has much more possibilities to investigate much further. We can ask and that all the people responsible for all of these services, that they appear for us in Parliament, and they will be questioned under oath. So this is a very useful instrument to have a much better idea on what went wrong in the functioning of our services.
Régis Le Sommier, reaction.
Yeah, my reaction, I would take an example to just say that the case of Ibrahim el-Bakraoui is not the only one, unfortunately. Take the person of Abdelhamid Abaoud. Abdelhamid Abaoud has been known to, for a fast rise in the Islamic State, in the circle of the Islamic State ever since 2014, and in 2015, in the issue of February of Dabiq, which is the magazine of the Islamic State, he was featured, with pictures, and he's the ringleader of Paris. Let's put it that way. Abaoud, in that piece, was telling that he went back to Belgium, that he was able to trick the custom agent who recognized him but wasn't so sure, and then he went back to Syria. So he bragged about it. He bragged about being able to go back to Belgium, organize the Verviers attack, which failed, unfortunately, and the two operatives were killed, and they were praised, actually, in the same issue of Dabiq. And Abaoud find himself, and I'm not going to blame only the Belgians, because Abaoud was able to go to Paris, organize the November 13 attack. He was wearing red sneakers, a black jacket, and nobody paid attention. He was caught on camera in the metro. Such a high-profile guy who was known among the circle of the Islamic State, that a guy like this was able to move freely in Paris, in between Paris and Brussels, is just mind-blogging to me.
Let me ask you a question, Yasser Louati, because we've had a few leads the last couple of days, most notably thanks to this taxi driver on Wednesday in Brussels who unwittingly took the suicide bombers to the airport and tipped off police afterwards. There's been several tip-offs from citizens, but there's this general feeling that in the community where this cell operated, there hasn't been enough from the community itself flagging, saying, hey, wait a minute, there's a problem here. And that it's not just a failure of the authorities, it's also a failure of the community.
First, communities cannot substitute themselves to the intelligence and the police. And second, it does not take much help to stay below the radars. One person harboring you is enough. And let's not forget the fact that the person we caught on Saturday was actually denounced by the person who was supposed to give him help. At the same time, and I can speak, for example, with the state of emergency here in France, people are scared of engaging. Actually, at the CCIF, we are dealing with a person who worked with the police, who was appreciated for his work, for bringing together the police and the youth, who never had any religious profile. Guess what happened to him? He got raided, arrested in his underwear in front of his kids. His daughter made a crisis because she saw her mother being handcuffed at the same time. And the guy doesn't understand. He's like, if I help the police and I work with them on a long-term basis.
So what are you saying? That for instance, this toll-free number that was set up after the Paris attacks for people to report stuff, that people shouldn't be using it?
That line is an open denunciation. Most of the cases we had dealing with raids and house arrests were people who got denounced by their neighbors and their workmates. At the same time, you have to understand, I'm not excusing anything whatsoever. I'm just saying that it doesn't take much for someone to hide. And of course, it's easy to say...
But you need a system by which people can say if they see...
It's an emergency situation.
Yeah, but was he seen
we're
outside?
In a terror,
Definitely.
time.
And the taxi driver did right. And make no mistake, I'm not defending anybody. I'm not saying they were right of being quiet. I'm not from Belgium. I was not there. I'm just saying that from the mechanisms that I know here, especially in France, and coming from the Muslim community that we hold responsible directly or indirectly, people are now scared. And Dounia Bouzar, for example, spoke about over 4,000 signaling of radicalized individuals directly from the community. I don't think they could do much more than that.
But were they given... Constance Le Grip, your thoughts
our
about it?
debate shows how difficult and complicated these matters are, of course. But there is a collective responsibility to take, and all the communities, all authorities, state, security services, communities, churches, religious organizations, all kinds of organizations and associations do have to be absolutely committed to the prevention of radicalization.
And I agree with you. And just for one thing, if we want communities to do their part of the work and go even the extra mile, we should not hold them responsible and do what we're doing right now in France.
Dirk van Meulen, I don't want to redo the whole debate because we wouldn't have time over what happened in that Molenbeek district over years in Brussels, because we talked about it after the January attacks, how there was, for reasons of political patronage, a situation that was allowed to get out of control. What's changed in Molenbeek since January?
It's hard to say. The government took in total about 30 measures. Some of them apply to Molenbeek, but I think the most important decision that has been taken is to put more police forces, more police people in these neighborhoods, because what we are, I don't know the situation in France, but I know that in Molenbeek we need more eyes and ears in this local community, and if we can get more people in there, I think we also will gain the confidence of the big majority of the Muslim community who doesn't like this kind of criminals and this kind of radicals. But I think that first of all the authorities have to make a bigger effort and send in more eyes and ears. I'm sure that we will beat them only if we are more present in the neighborhoods, on the streets, with people, looking around, listening, and getting information from the neighborhood.
And will the information from those eyes and ears be shared? Because we've seen here in France how there sometimes are rivalries between various intelligence services. We understand that in Brussels itself, there's something like 6 different types of police force.
That's correct. There you're putting the finger on a second problem. The first problem having the need to have more eyes and ears in the neighborhoods, and then secondly, we need a much better flow of information going through. I myself and my party, and let's say a big number of the members of parliament, we are asking for one police authority for the whole of Brussels. If you split that city into 6 parts, then you are creating the possibility, and in reality, unfortunately, we see it has happened, you're creating the possibility that flows of informations are not going smoothly. So that's a second important thing we have to decide, but it's not easy because there was opposition in the past, and I hope that the attacks of last Tuesday will change the situation and that we can take this important decision.
Let me ask you, Régis Le Sommier, because Dirk van der Meulen rightly pointing out that Belgium and France are 2 very different countries. Belgium is federal. Here in France, things are a little bit more top-down, very centralized.
Yeah.
You heard Yasser Louati talk about suspicion when it comes to police in the part of many in local communities. Can there be trust that can be built between these local communities and the police to weed out these dangerous people?
Well, I think there is. I'd like to answer. I mean, why should there hasn't been any major backlash on the part of the French people towards the Muslim since Charlie Hebdo and November 13.
It depends what you call a major backlash.
I'm talking violence against Muslim, or with the exception of Corsica. The example of Corsica, but elsewhere there hasn't been. So I think the radicals. You're talking about.
There have been major backlash against Muslims in January, and the second backlash after November was the state of emergency itself. When you see the brutality,
come on,
sir.
Come on.
Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Ligue droits de l'homme, and CCIF.
You're acting like a militant right now.
I am not.
You're not acting like somebody delivering information.
3,400
You have an
raids.
agenda, but obviously you have an agenda.
I don't.
So I'm a journalist, and I'm looking at the reality of France. I don't think French people in general are blaming the Muslim community for what happens. And second, radicalization is doing more harm to the Muslim community than to any other community.
Definitely,
there are more Muslims dying in the world.
Yes, you are
in the
right.
world of
We forget that too often.
And this is why I don't see why there shouldn't be any cooperation to fight those people. Why should there be this type of suspicion when when you know that in your neighborhood there's a suspect terrorist or some imam who's preaching radical? Because we know these people, they exist. There's the imam of Brest, there's the imam of Pontoise.
I have to answer. There are too many things to answer right now.
And these people exist, okay?
All right.
And they're spreading radicals' fault.
Sir,
and you know it perfectly.
The Imam of Brest was actually acting against radical groups. You may disagree with his rhetoric.
Right. Talking about,
Let me just explain for our viewers who don't know. But this is an imam in the Atlantic port city of Brest.
Exactly.
Who said that
we have it on
listening
videotape.
to music is
listening to the music
is
doing
that
the word of the devil.
We can disagree with him, but
yes, of course.
Sir, you have to ask.
I'm talking about the language they use, and I'm talking about what they're doing.
Sir, I'm pretty sure you know a difference between speech you don't agree with and someone pushing for terrorism. At the same time, don't forget, every single mosque in France is under high surveillance.
But I'm talking about these people are doing harm to the Muslim community as well.
Do you think we know that? And let me give you an example. I have here the report from the what we call the Secretary General for Defense and National Security. And it says that we have not acted upstream to this day. This is a 2-year-old report. It says that every single time we approached the radicalization process, we kept aside Muslim organizations. It's here, sir. I'm not inventing anything. At the same time, I will give you a few figures. All right, 3,400 raids within 4 months. Only 5 inquiries opened on terror grounds. That's for one thing. Then you have the
What do you suggest? What do you suggest?
Can I answer one question at a time? I can definitely do it, and I will answer it as well.
You've got such a long speaking time. That's
because
why
I know my subject, I wouldn't speak otherwise. When it comes to that, 3,400 raids,
than questions, actually.
4 or 5 inquiries on terror charges. And then you have the CCIF itself dealing currently 267 cases of state of emergency abuses, raids against innocents, putting under house arrest.
On the question now of how do you build the trust between these communities, and one of the main measures that had been said was we need to have more. We need to no longer have foreigners who are imams and have locals who are imams because they're important in the community.
I'm going to give you an example. And I agree on that statement. Yes, there are homegrown imams in France who are perfectly well aware of what's going on in our French culture, the French context, etc. I will give you a story to sum up the whole problem. First, we keep bringing imams from abroad. They may be competent when it comes to religion. But the question is, they have to be competent when it comes to religion and our socio-economic, our social fabric. A city, let's say, in the southern part of Paris, Athis-Mons, for example, you have a mayor that denied and blocked and boycotted the project of the local youth to build a French mosque managed by the local community for the community. You know what she said? I'd rather have the future mosque directed by a foreign consulate so I can be invited for free over there. That's a mayor in the southern part of France. When
that's anecdotal. We're talking
No, it's not, sir. When you have most of our mosques under direct interference, either by the local politicians or foreign embassies, you won't have a French Islam. And as a matter of fact, Daesh considers French Muslims as apostates, and they should be part of the victims. That's a problem. So French Muslims are the
It's a
first
problem. Of course,
Yes,
it's a problem.
and they
we
say-
share your
yeah.
concern about this question.
They
But
kill
what do
Muslims
you
ab-
So
suggest
why not
concretely?
fight the Islamic State infiltration in France with the French police? Why?
The better answer is a better integration mechanism.
Sure,
That's
but
the problem.
On the long
we have
term,
to,
but
we have to stop
there's
treating
an
people-
emergency situation.
The head of
A lot
Europol, the head
Because
of
we keep acting downstream and not upstream. We keep chasing events. We are constantly late. They are much ahead of us.
That's right.
They are ahead of us in their propaganda, in the way they adapt, in their rhetoric.
And
They
we have to
use our
adapt.
problems
Absolutely.
against us. Look
Absolutely.
at how they communicate.
And
Forget,
they
this
brag
is
about it.
crazy. And
They've written it.
You spoke about the guy who was
me bring
bragging
it-
about tricking our
Let me bring
own
in Dirk van Meulen,
policy.
who's Place de la Bourse in Brussels, where again those people have been converging after Tuesday's attacks, and ask you. We saw the head of Europol grant an interview this Thursday in which he said an estimated 5,000 Europeans, many from France and Belgium, who've gone to Syria, many who have returned, and they just feel swamped. They don't know how to handle it. Where do you start?
Yeah, that's indeed. I think this is the big problem, and I am afraid that we are waiting for hard times, because the more Daesh will find itself in troubles in Iraq and Syria, I think they will try to wake these cells and to plan attacks. That is really very difficult. And listening to the debate a couple of minutes ago, I think that in Belgium, as you know, maybe we have relatively the highest number of foreign terrorist fighters. And I think that the explanation for it is that the radical forms of Islam, Wahhabism, Salafism, were brought in Belgium and were promoted in Belgium through support of the Saudi Arabian government. So I think that we will have difficult times ahead of us, and we will have to do much more to de-radicalize all these people coming in. And this will start, and that is unfortunately what is one of our big problems in Belgium, that we have to watch them much closer than we did up until now.
Dirk van der Meulen, I want to thank you so much for joining us from Brussels. And again, the people of France, our thoughts are with those in Belgium and what they've endured this week. We want to thank as well in our panel here, Régis Le Sommier, Constance Le Grip, and Yasser Louati. Stay with us. Our Media Watch segment is next. Say hello to James Creedon.
Hi, François. So just to look at how politicians have been responding to the attacks in Brussels earlier this week. A lot of calls for toughening of laws, if you like, or the treatment of those convicted of terror offences. Xavier Bertrand of the Les Républicains party saying that he would not have voted for the abolition of the death penalty in 1981. Quite a lot of people responding to that. Also in the same party, Nathalie Kosciusko-Morizet calling for real life sentences. Now, this is echoing actually a call by the Prime Minister, Manuel Valls. Irrevocable life sentences. In other words, if people are sentenced to life, that should mean life. So certainly there's a toughening of the tone in terms of how the authorities, how the justice system should deal with those convicted of terrorism.
Constance Le Grip, there's a 900-pound gorilla in the room when we talk about French politics, and that's the far-right National Front. And there's the feeling with this kind of talk that there's a bit of one-upmanship.
Our answers should correspond to a holistic approach. Of course, there should be answers on security matters, security issues, and common European measures, of course, and I won't get into details, so we know all about it, but now that we have to decide and then to implement really, because we decided, the ministers decided a few months ago and then didn't implement the measures. So we have answers to give on the security issues, but also answers to give on the social and economic issues. Of course, integration is a big challenge for all our societies, all our European societies, of course, and then also answers, of course, vis-à-vis the rest of the world, what's going on in Syria, Iraq, and Libya, of course, because there is also a diplomatic important issue that we are facing too.
In any case, in the US, we're seeing similar sort of rhetoric, I suppose, from Donald Trump. In any case, the Libération, if I can get onto the page, is talking about it, their correspondent in New York, saying how the attacks could boost Donald Trump's candidacy. In fact, there was an article in Politico saying we could just be one terrorist attack away from a Donald Trump presidency. In other words, after the Paris attacks in November, he came out with declarations that we had to have a national register in the US of all Muslims on US soil. Then after the San Bernardino attack in December, it was we have to prevent them from entering the US. So, and now he has come out with a further statement saying waterboarding and other forms of torture might be an appropriate response, and perhaps we wouldn't, if those approaches had been used for Salah Abdel-Salam after his arrest, maybe we could have avoided the attack. All sorts of speculative elements in that statement, I think.
This one-upmanship in the United States, is it the same as that in Europe?
Say again?
The one-upmanship we're seeing in the United States among the Republican candidates, is it the same as what we're seeing in Europe?
I don't know, we have to ask our politicians, but I would like to react to what has just been said. First, all experts tell you that torture does not bring the right answers from the people you are currently torturing. Even John McCain himself said it. At the same time, what we're hearing right now, that's exactly what Daesh needs. That's what they want, and they also called for blind terrorist attacks, repercussion against communities, so they can keep hiring and telling them, see, they are humiliating you, come to us.
Well, actually, that was the point that was made in an article in The Guardian by Simon Jenkins. The scariest thing about Brussels is our reaction to it. Now, what he said is you have to put yourself in the position of Daesh, and what they're looking for this week is another success for them, if you like. It's converted a squalid, psychopathological act into a warrior-evoking, population-terrifying, policy-changing event. In other words, this really does play into what they're looking for.
Food for thought. Many thanks for that, James Creedon. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.